Another day, another double feature. This time around, I wanted to catch up on all the Oscar Best Picture movies I haven't talked about yet. These are the final two movies. I have reviewed every other Oscar Best Picture for 2023, so if you want to see those, there's reviews for them. These are the final two I needed to talk about. Women Talking and All Quiet on the Western Front. Let's start with All Quiet on the Western Front. This is not a new concept. There's always a war movie that comes out every year that garners award attention, becomes something people want to talk about. There's always one. I'm not against that. And when you use the title All Quiet on the Western Front, you're immediately drawn to the other movies that use that title. It's not a new concept to talk about war or World War I or this genre. So I went in with tempered expectations. I'm like, okay, it's a Netflix drop. Does that mean anything to me? It's a German-made film, which does excite me. The fact that it's German-made gets me a little bit excited because I'm like, oh, okay, that means we're going to see a different side than an American bastardized version of this. That's kind of exciting. I gotta be honest, I don't think this movie is egregious in any capacity. It's just not that exciting. All Quiet on the Western Front does exactly what it needs to. It tells you the story it's setting up, the characters we're following, in a world that we're familiar with. When your message of a movie is war is hell, even the Germans had it bad, I know that. We all know that. War sucks. So we're kind of like at the end of the war in this movie, and the German soldiers are scarce. And as the story progresses, you see like, oh, they're getting younger and younger and dumber in terms of soldiers. Just these kids who don't know what they're doing, who are thrust into the situation because of the political high-stakes men that are just saying, you have to fight for our country. It's interesting in that capacity, and I don't think it's like a genius attempt at presenting that argument. It does it in a way that does make sense, where you're like, yeah, this is scary, this sucks. It's not for any of the actions taking place. It's a very anti-war movie, which I like to see, because war is bad. And this film, it is very well made. But just because it's well made, that's not going to instantly make it this genius piece of cinema. It is far from dumb. It is far from lazy. It's just clearly made to be this film. The extras are good. The cinematography is good. The characters are good. But they're beats you have already seen a million times over in other war movies. It has specific moments where you can reference like, oh, this is clearly a setup to get us to this point. This is clearly a setup to get us to this point, without really presenting anything new. Now, if you are a younger person who has never really experienced larger war films, there is something to be said here, especially from like an English audience like myself, watching this from a German perspective. That is interesting, how these men don't particularly care about what they're fighting for, but they are just told their country is under attack, and they're trying to find a way to preserve that. There is something to say there. It does say that. Does that make it interesting? No, but it does say it, and you understand the reasoning for it. But character setups, okay, they're fine. You get that. And then you're like, okay, let's see the intensity of war. It handles that, I think, in a very beautiful manner, where we're watching the bloodshed in real time. The actions are very prolific. Everything is happening and presenting itself in a mature manner where you're engrossed by the action. You're watching these beautiful scenes. And while the war stuff is in itself very spectacular and interesting to watch, what you're really drawn to are the quiet moments from our lead. Paul is our lead. He is this young man who we see his progression throughout the war, starting off as the recruit to being one of the final men in the final days, and how he gets to his end. It's very fascinating. And his journey, it does ground the story where it's like if we had other protagonists or just made like an ensemble, it doesn't work. He is a very good lead because he is clearly just like, I know what I have to do, and the scenes I am interested in, he has to find his way through them. There are specific moments with him that make this work. Strong lead. There's a quiet moment after a huge battle where it's like, we have to defend our land. And it's him and this other soldier like trapped in like this kind of like crevasse area. And both of them are like broken and dying men. And he almost kills this one like French soldier and he tries desperately to save him. And you're like, yeah, when you make a war story about like the personal connections between the two people, where he's trying to figure out how to save this man that he was supposed to kill, seeing like he has a wife and a child, seeing there's a whole life in this man that he doesn't know, because when you look at it as a statistic, it takes away from the personal humanity. That's where I'm like, yeah, that's the stuff that's really good. Even towards the end of the film, which I think the last 30 minutes does a lot for me more than like the first couple, because I'm like, yeah, I get it. I've seen a lot of war movies. You're not doing anything new or spectacular. You know the character beats we have to set up. It's nice to look at. It's not breathtaking to look at. It does its job well. I'm on board for it. But the last 30 minutes where you think everyone gets to go home, and then some asshole who's like a general in charge is like, actually, we're defending our land. I don't care what those people say. They're not taking this land. And every soldier is just like, fine, I guess we're dying when we could be going home. And you see how he's helping like a young recruit who's like maybe a teenage boy. And you're like, that is intense stuff, because we've seen his arc and that works better. It's one of the rare finales where I'm like, yep, this is what the story's been about. So when it gets to there, it feels earned, it feels respected, it makes me happy, and I'm impressed with everything we saw. Now, that's not to say the technical aspects of this are bad. The cinematography, the lighting, the camera work, all of it works great. The acting is phenomenal. It's a rare movie like this where we take breaks for intense, quiet moments, and it makes it all strong. I guess it's called All Quiet on the Western Front, so what am I even talking about? But it plays in those silence really well, and I do appreciate that because it makes it feel a little bit better. But nothing about this film invokes anything new or original. It harps on other stories in the genre. It tells you exactly what you already know about war and about World War I and everything, so it doesn't particularly do that. There's this kind of like subplot of the more political side of the war, of like the people who are in charge, the upper class who, board a train, go near the front lines, we don't actually go there, and they're like, if we sign a treaty, we'll stop this soon. And that stuff is the most egregious in my opinion, where it's like, okay, you're presenting that these guys are helping, but they're not doing anything particularly interesting. And having the one guy being like, every second we waste, lives die. It's like, yeah, we know. So what are you doing? Like, why are we spending time dwelling on this? I don't know. It is a completely passable film that does everything right to make you go, cool, I'm on board for that. What else you got? But to invoke originality, it doesn't really. So All Quiet on the Western Front, I'm going to give a 5 out of 10. And then we have Women Talking, which is a film I am very hesitant to talk about. Especially as a cis white male, I just think like, okay, how do I broach this in a way that doesn't sound rude or like I'm talking down to the production of this movie or anything like that? I don't know. I'm trying to be very neutral on it, but again, when you're talking about a film that is about women dealing with a trauma of this extreme nature, you're always going to be like, oh, you're a man, what are you talking about? I want to just say that because I really like this film. I had a really good time watching it. I enjoyed my time watching it. I went to see it in a theater because it just kind of like came in my area recently. The theater was pretty much full with a bunch of women. There was maybe a couple other men there with their wives. And I'm like, yeah, this is good. It would be nice to see more men watching a movie like this, but I get it. Men are bad. They want to watch a war movie, right? So Women Talking, Sarah Polley's new feature, is the story of these women in this like religious commune in 2010 where they are all attacked by certain men in the village, and they're deciding, they have like a vote. It's kind of like 12 Angry Men in that sense, where it's like, we have to all agree if we stay here and forgive the men, if we stay here and we fight the men for what they did, or we all decide to leave. It is a very intense movie that is dealing with subject matter that will not be for everyone. And I need to make that abundantly clear. It's not for the faint of heart. It does talk around the issues in a naturalistic way where, yes, we say what these men did and we show what these men did, but we don't make it like the selling point of like, look how broken and distraught these women are. It's about their power in community to help each other figure out what's the right situation to do. And I'll be honest, this is one of the best scripts I've seen in a long time. I love that it got the screenplay nomination because I'm just sitting there like, wow, we're saying things that sound very poetic and important, and it's that type of thing that a man couldn't create. And I love that about this, where it's like it's a female-driven movie with female aesthetic, female features. Everything about this is created and crafted, hand-carved from a woman's perspective as it needed to be. The way the men are characterized and just like presented to us, the way every woman of different status talks about their position, talks about their feelings. I really like how it presented that, because there's not a dry moment in this movie where you're like, damn, that doesn't feel authentic. Every single moment feels authentic and real and earnest, and something that is probably talked about in larger capacities. These women are given a moment to decide the fate of their lives and the lives of those around them, and it's such a well-executed portrayal. It's quiet, it's calm, but when it needs to get loud, and it can get loud, it gets loud. Not a bad performance in the bunch. Every single character, every single actor in this movie gives an incredible performance that is spectacular. I could sit here and just list them all off, but I don't think that's going to do it justice. The ones who I would say are the leads, essentially, Rooney Mara, Claire Foy, Jessie Buckley, the biggest names in this who are doing more. You're just like, okay, all of those women are around the same age bracket, having to deal with these different travesties. Like, one of them is an unwed mother. One of them is hurt by her husband. Another one is scared that her son is going to be indoctrinated into like this bad like existence. And when they all play off each other, you're like, yep, I'm all for it. Give me some of this. Like, it's so brilliant and tragic. And I was just like, okay, this sucks to see that this is an issue we have to deal with. And going into this movie not knowing anything, it really upset me knowing this was 2010 when this story takes place. And yes, it says this is an imagination of female whatever, kind of just like a what if scenario. But you can imagine this as a conversation had any day. You can. And that's what's scary about it. The performances, very impactful. The older generation kind of having like this clearer mind about things, just like, I don't think towards the end of the movie, there's a scene where one of the older actresses is just like, if I'm going to die here, you better take my body with you if you leave, because I'm not being buried here. And I'm like, okay, that is a really good moment. Even the younger kids who are these broken people, like, I don't want to get into the specifics of it because it's a very hard topic to talk about, but some of the younger girls almost being victimized in that capacity or having been victimized in that capacity, helping the older generation understand their position, how they feel about things, or just finally letting loose and like, this is not good. We're not okay. It's powerful. It's strong. It is very emotional and has some of the best looking aesthetics I've seen in a long time. It's very quiet, but the color palette is just telling a lot of the story where it's just somber and dark. People are trying to say things they can't say. And the aesthetic, again, it's just stiff cameras, in and out of focus at times. They're not doing a lot of craziness. But this is where I'm like, yeah, you don't need to go above and beyond. What we're seeing is like a stage play. It's these women having a conversation. They're telling that story, and it matters. There is one central male character in Ben Winshaw. He is given exactly what he needs to do and says exactly what he needs to, because he is a man who has seen the world, and when he comes back, he's like, I wish I could do more. I'll do what they need me to, and doesn't overstay his welcome or overstep his welcome. And that makes it a little more better. Because I am a man, yes, I did gravitate to his character more because I understand how it would feel to be in that position. But not for a second was I put off by the intensity and the emotional narrative that is being driven by these girls. They are telling these prolific, powerful, impactful things that has happened to them. And every second of the way, my heart is breaking. And I know this is staged, but I'm like, this is intense. That is how you captivate an audience. Now, like I said, I was with an audience of mostly women. I don't know how the older men in the audience felt about watching this movie. I would hope, I should say, that they walked away feeling they learned something, where it's like, maybe don't give in to societal norms or give in to that systemic power dynamic. I hope that's something that could be learned. But I don't know how many men watch this. But it is, I would argue, one of the strongest cases of just, this is why we need to tell these types of stories, because they teach you something. There is so much to discuss just in like the nuance of it. What does it mean to actually leave the village? Do we take the sickly with us? Do we take the younger men with us? Are men just brought up to be this way? How do we believe in God in that situation? There's the religious undertone that plays a big factor. It's all fascinating and doesn't shy away from the dark nitty-gritty of what's being said. It's a very strong movie. I had an amazing time watching this because I just walked away not sure how I felt about the world, but guess what? I see the beauty in it, in the world. As intense and disturbed as the story was, I think this is a really well-made film and genius in a lot of accounts. And I would put it in my top 5 Best Picture noms. I would say this is my top 5. So good. Please watch it. I think there's a lot to learn about this film, and you're seeing actresses of old generations, new generations, and ones you're familiar with delivering some of their best work. It's breathtaking. And I hope Sarah Polley gets the more and more work to do because she's clearly a genius. So, women talking, I'm going to give a 9 out of 10. Now, thank you guys for watching this double feature. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Hive, and I will catch you in the next one. Have fun, stay safe, good luck.